What else do we need to know?
About life, or um, well, I think what people need to realize is that when we get to the end of one of these projects or programs, right, it's always how do you tie it up in a nice, neat bow? And I don't know if there is a nice, neat bow for something like this, because it's sort of like it's open ended all the time, right? The packages, once you've established moving into those territories, it kind of permanently leaves at least certain avenues in and out of it open, right? It's sort of like opening you up to new experiences, which produce more experiences. And how do you not get lost in those things, or how do you, sort of travel down those other paths? And so, is there an end to this? And I think that's the part that a lot of times, at least I get stymied on a little bit with these programs, as a package, because any other time that I've taught them, they've sort of been bits and pieces, open-ended, tied it together over years of other work, right, or alongside it. So it's sort of like, that's the way I learned it. It was like woven into many other things, sort of making the correlations and then finding where other things help to promote that, and then finally saying, well, I'm 3/4 of the way there. What would happen if I really focus my attention on this for a bit of time and tried to open it up to see how well I could get it to happen consistently. But to sort of have that as a mental construct right from the beginning, it's daunting, really. I mean, to be able to tie it into a full program, it's that has a finite beginning and end, right? So, and we get down to this last bit, right? And it's sort of like, what else do we need to know? Everything. Because it's all experiential now, right? It's like there are, maybe a few little nuances that we can articulate at the end to sort of help promote the experiences a bit, and give you a little course correction along the way of doing the work in this area, in this case seeing. But we haven't done an exhaustive study of all the little nuances here and there, right? Because many of those come from the idiosyncratic use of the program, right? And how people have those experiences, and then they, the feedback loop feeds that information back in and then produces a different result, as you're taking that into account, right, along with the same techniques or whatever, right? Because do you put the experience aside? Do you, and you may consciously do that, but the subconscious is still running that experience, right? So it's always going to kind of map it, engage it, and say, do I want to enhance that aspect? And then how do you do that without anticipating it to some degree, and let it just unfold the way it's naturally going to go for you, and then play to your strengths. So if the meditational aspects are strong for you, then that would be your way in deeper to the phenomena of seeing, right? If it's more of the structured, everything from eye exercises to that sort of bare bones analytical structure, then that may be your way in, but they all have to be done, right? So the bottom line is that you have to do it in order to actually achieve the outcome. Yeah. So, in the end, I think for everything that I teach, the primary goal is to have people have the experience. And they're only going to get that from doing. So I always make doing like the focus of anything that I teach. Even the theoretical stuff, it's like, can you run scenarios, in your mind, or write them out on paper, or however you would do it, to sort of see if there are holes in the theory, and and what can you do to fill those. And again, your experience will be more beneficial to you than all of the stories and all of the techniques combined, really, because that's the culmination of your work, is your experience with that. And can it be enhanced? Can it grow? Will it move into something completely different that you weren't expecting? I mean, those are the things that are I think brilliant about anything in energy work or spirituality, is that it opens up many avenues, even if you're trying to focus on one. And when you reach that goal, there's like more doors that open up. And so you start going, oh, what if I use it for this? Or what if I use it for that? I was thinking about it for healing, but there's the other avenues too that are, applicable in my life. And, I think if I explore those, I might get some benefit from that. So I wouldn't pigeonhole myself into a specific application for the event of seeing. And I think that would be selling yourself short. Be open to the experience and apply it wherever you think it's going to be valuable. And glean what you can from it.
Do you think that people need to make it their own somehow?
I think it happens whether they want to or not. I think that copying somebody else, completely, and that's it, and you don't go any farther than that, will eventually run out for you. It'll plateau, and it'll eventually start to diminish. So you have to express it. You have to make it your own. I mean, I think it's an inevitable process for some reason. If people keep practicing, they're going to find nuances that are really simple for them, that they were seeing it all the time and they never realized it. There are just all kinds of ways that I think that happens. I think that happens with any energy work. You learn the basic structure, and then you fill in the form around it, but eventually the form becomes a little stagnant, and you have to sort of apprehend the information, meaning that you've digested it so much and worked with it so much that you come up with your own articulation of it, and it may very well be idiosyncratic, that it's very personal to you, and that it works for you, and it may not work for anybody else. But if you're getting the results from that, then there's no reason to say, that you need to stick to this specific form, right? The end result is all important. So, yeah, I think that eventually just continuing to press the process and do the work and extend yourself, make it as good as you can for yourself, then, it will become in some ways very much a personal practice for yourself. For you, it's going to have the flavor of you in it, right? So,
but there's nothing outside of what we've talked about in this program that you can think of that would facilitate seeing. Basically, I mean, not that we have every technique known to man, but I just mean, like, at this point, there's nothing that's been left out. It's just how you work with what's already been given, and how you practice it, and how important it is to you to, put different aspects of it into play until you get where you want to be with it, until you bring it to the level that you want it to be at.
I think initially, yes. I think, one of the general aspects of working in any kind of energy and opening yourself up to that and actually engaging it is that, there are other techniques, there are other I don't know, I don't want to call it a technique, but there are other situations that you could put yourself in that would facilitate seeing. Obviously, it's not the only way to do this. But, and I think that as you keep applying yourself to what you've been given, what you've gotten here, if those are needed, they'll open themselves up to you. So things like a dark retreat, that type of thing where it's like you go for a number of days, in complete darkness for, an extended period of time, not like an extreme 28 or 30 days or something, but, even 4 or 5 days, that's a long time to be completely without light. And, the energetic mechanisms that are applied in seeing, they tend to, if they're stimulated already, they're going to tend to try to bump themselves up to give you more input from a total lack of light. You're going to try, your subconscious is going to go, wait a second, I need more apparatus here to make decisions about where to turn, where to go, what to do, how to think, how to act in my environment that I find myself in. I mean,
Could somebody,
what would
if
happen?
they wanted to, set that situation up for themselves?
Sure. I mean, it takes a bit of finagling, I mean, imagine trying to, to do that in a relatively safe and comfortable way. I mean, it's pretty, I don't know if most people have the facility to do that.
But it's not necessary.
It's not necessary, but it is one way that will stimulate that pretty consistently too. I mean, everybody's a little bit different. I don't want anybody to call me and say like, hey, I went in the dark for 5 days and nothing happened. That's 5 days of my life I'm never going to get back.
Thanks a lot, Bri.
Right. I don't want to be blamed for that, but I mean, because, think about it. It's very difficult to keep all light out. It really is, to make a completely dark room. I mean, think about where we live and how we live. And, if you're not going to be in a closet, and even then, you have to block the doorway. Just all these things that you'd have to think about in order to, how do you facilitate going to the bathroom? How do you facilitate eating? It's not like you're going to be completely confined in solitary confinement for 5 days. That's not safe, right? So, how do you, what are your contingencies for things getting out of control too, right? What are your safety mechanisms that are, in place? Usually dark retreats aren't always done solo. So, there is that semi-comfort or discomfort of having other people around. So, if it's a monastic situation or something like that. But like a silent retreat or anything like that, like a retreat for fasting or being awake, right? Or awake sleep at very specific intervals, anything like that is outside of the norm of your daily existence, is going to have, over time, a profound effect on your psyche. And what that ends up producing for you, everybody's different, right? It's just that we know by cutting out the sensory input of our primary mode of moving in this environment, vision, the brain has a little bit of a freak out moment at that point when it knows, oh, it's not just closing my eyes and I can open them anytime. It's one of those reasons why, whether they know it or not, why meditators usually have a candle. And if you ask them to do, complete darkness while they're meditating, they're very uncomfortable with that, even though their eyes are closed, right, most of the time. But the thing is, when you're in complete darkness and you see something or you experience something that you don't like or, has a negative result in your mind, when you open your eyes, there's still nothing there. So, you have no illumination. So it's,
so that thing
there's
is
nowhere
still
to
present.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a bit jarring for even longtime meditators. So, I mean, very few meditators actually meditate in complete darkness. So there's something, primal in that. It's not just that they haven't been told. There's something in there that's, is disconcerting. Sort of really makes you stare into the abyss. And, when you find that something's staring back at you, opening your eyes isn't going to make a difference. So that can be...
What do you mean by that?
As a few people that we know have stated, it's sort of like, probably the proper attitude, if you're really trying to get past that point, is, when you realize something's staring back at you, to stare back into it and beyond it, right? And so when you do that, you make it past that abyss part. You move to the other side. You've jumped the canyon, basically. So it's only through those, dragons that you can, kind of move over to the next side. Those are the guardians at the gates, and those are the watchtower guardians, and all of that. That's all the similar sort of the terms that we use to best express that in a way that we can understand. Each one is a little bit different, but they're all in the same territory, right? It's like getting beyond that thing that scares you the most, that will move you into a whole nother landscape. And usually that's where the biggest treasure is for you too, right? What you want is usually just beyond that place that's the most scary to you. It's just set up that way. I can't tell you that I know why. It just seen it too many times with too many people to think that it's not a general principle of something, right? It's like, it really is. I mean, those things that scare us the most are the things that we have to get through in order to reap the biggest benefits on the other side.
And do you think that happens even with something like this?
Oh, definitely. I mean, with more probability, right? I mean, it's like people go through their whole physical existence and, they have some, but they can always veer off that course if they find that the fear of going through that is far greater than the perceived greatness on the other side, right? The treasure that they would receive isn't adequate to the task of going through that fear.
With something in their physical life.
Sure.
Like a new job or a new relationship or something like that.
Sure, it's hard, right? I mean, we all have had hard things, and we can say that they're very they're different for each of us, right? But in the quality of fears, it can be very similar to, even though they're different situations, right? It's like, for somebody who's extremely introverted, the being the center of attention and making it so by your own volition is death-defying.
Right.
I mean, there's a high probability of having a panic attack or, the anxiety level of, I mean, to the point where your conscious mind is practically screaming out for you to stop and doing anything to keep you from going through with this, right? So, I mean, that level of fear is gigantic.
And do you think that that's similar with this work as we go, because it calls on us to, even though we're looking to perceive the energetic outside of us, it requires many techniques that take us more internal, right?
And hitting it from different angles, right?
Yeah.
It's never just a one straight path approach, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think that, and of course everybody will get more or less play out of any of those techniques,
right?
Because we just have natural proclivities toward one direction or another,
Right.
and those are going to be easier for us, and the other ones will be a little more strain. But, and it doesn't mean if those are the ones that are really, really difficult for you that you should just press all your time doing that either. It's not a no pain, no gain type attitude, right? It's a balance. You need to, it is important, it's part of the process, but if you're, if you're really struggling with it, I mean, really struggling with it, then, you have to be the one to say, I'm going to step back from this just for a little bit, and I'm going to go to this other thing. It's just a different angle. And when I sort of catch my equilibrium again, then I'm going to go back and apply myself again to that and see if I can get any further. You see, that's another reason that there are so many techniques, because, you can manipulate them and try to wear down those barriers little by little. It doesn't have to be all or nothing plunge, kicking yourself over the abyss or whatever. Right. It's like, I'm afraid of the dark. Well, a 5-day dark retreat might be a little beyond you.
Right.
I mean, it's, we don't want to push people into a sort of a dark night of the soul intentionally. I mean, those things happen, but they, it's not something you want to instigate for no reason. Just to, thinking that the more brutal I am with myself, the better off it's going to be, or the quicker I'm going to get there, or anything like that. No, it's not. It's like, try to do it as balanced as you can. And when you get stymied at a certain part, you switch it up, right? It's like, be adaptive and innovative. Well, what if I put this first and then put this second? What will the result be? I mean, we're not playing with nitroglycerin here, right? It's not like it's going to blow your hands off if you do a technique in a different direction, right? So, I mean, don't break the principles, right? But at the same time, mixing and matching the techniques to produce something that's, the end result in a much better way for you, there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just that we're giving the structure that I found has had the most success with the majority of people. That's all. But it's not like I haven't had people that said, oh, I'm just so stuck on this and I've been doing it for months and I can't get past the point. I'm like, why are you doing it for months? It's like, do this now and then come back to that after several days, or even take a month off and, not completely off, but, try these other techniques for a while. They were good for you. Get back in the swing again. Get your equilibrium. Let that sort of settle in a way that, you might contemplate for a while, and then, go back and apply yourself. And it's like a very, very high percentage of people that when they do that approach, instead of getting frustrated and banging their head against the wall with the same technique that's not producing, that moves them past that point. And it's so much better after that. Again, it doesn't, if you're, anytime I'm consistently coming up against a barrier, I mean, consistently, not like one time, oh, that wasn't good, I'm going to switch. And it's not like this monkey thing, right? Like, but if let's say I do something for a week or I've done it for a month and the next week it's just so flat that nothing's really moving and I'm not getting anywhere. I don't lament about that. I don't push even harder, because that's just force trying to push me through it, right? So I want to use the power of my thinking and saying, okay, how can I be innovative and adapt myself to the situation, use a different way of maybe trying the door this way, right? It's not like the door handle doesn't turn this way and I just keep trying to turn it that way and get frustrated, and every time I go back to it I'm turning it the same way. No, it's like, what if you turn it the other way? What if you push or pull? Or what if it's like little different angles just to sort of get an idea, and then maybe it is turning the right way, but you would have never gotten there if you hadn't tried jiggling the handle in all these other ways, right? So it's the same kind of thing. I mean, again, probably the best piece of advice I was ever given was, if something confuses you theoretically, philosophically, energetically, it's like, always try to get a clear analogy with something physical, because then it will clear your head. They're as above, so below. If you really take that to heart, there's nothing energetic out there that would, that defies a physical analogy. We probably just haven't come up with it yet, or somebody more brilliant than me hasn't discovered it and articulated it in a good way. But I think that's those are good words to live by, because it will clear your head. It's never like you get to a point where it's like, I just can't. I'm not smart enough to figure this out, or I'm not good enough to do this. It's literally like, bring it back to basics. Is the end result similar to something in the physical world that you've done in the past? And what was the method you got to be in that place? If you can figure that out, you'll figure out where you're getting stumped, and you'll be able to adjust that. It's a simplistic way of looking at things, but simple works. If the electricity goes down and the guy's pneumatic nail guns don't work when they're building a house, there's always the hammer. Hard to break a hammer. It's simple and it works, right? So it's like,
And these techniques are that.
I think so. I think we've done a very good job at trying to give, very, as much as we can say, concrete techniques that will sort of get you past these little stopping points. And the most important thing is to give the experience, right? Because there's nothing that will drive you more than your own experience, no matter how small or whatever, because you're not convincing yourself through somebody else that it's possible to do it. You've done it. So it's like, now I just need to enhance it. And that's a whole different thing. Once you can do it, it's like, there's no question anymore. It's just like, now it's just, how do I make it better and as consistent as I want it to be? And then once that's there, it's like, well, how do I utilize it now? Right? I mean, we never even just very finely touched on, what to do with it. Very general scape, right? But again, that's something that's, I think, idiosyncratic for each person. Like, how do you utilize it? What do you do with it? You may find completely unique avenues for its application and how you can use that in your life to make your life better. And if your life's better, other people's lives, that will resonate out to them too. Your family, your friends, community, the world, right? So you're just one more node that's doing very well in this environment, and that resonates out. People see that. People feel it. They don't even have to come into contact with you. Just moving through this environment in that way, anybody that touches on that is going to feel that presence, and it's going to rub off on them.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for building out how to see energy for all of us.
Yeah. Well, it's my pleasure. It's really, I mean, I can't do it all myself. Right? Not that I'd ever try. That would just be stupid. But, in the end, we all walk this path alone, but it's really nice to have company. For every length of time, right? Some are very, short acquaintances, but doesn't mean they're any less meaningful. And some are very long, relationships, and those are awesome too. So it's like, but our experiences are our own, even when we convey them to other people, no matter how fantastical they are, right? They're still ours. It doesn't lessen them. In here, they never degrade. It's like, they just, I can't think of a profound experience that I've had that isn't still as sharp as having it yesterday. They stay with you, they propel you forward and make you anticipate what's coming next, and ready to engage it, and keep you on task, right? Without beating yourself to a pulp.
Right. It's just good to have that motivation, I mean, when it comes to a lot of these techniques, which can be a little bit challenging or require a certain amount of discipline and all that.
And think about it. I mean, it's like, if I wanted to be like, like a great baseball player, right? I mean, it's like, it's got to be friggin' boring after a while to just to go to the batting cage every day and hit 500 balls. I mean, if that's even possible, I have no idea. I'm not a
Right.
baseball guy, but I mean, after a while, I mean, yeah, you're honing your skill, right? So you're very focused on what you're doing. But I mean, every day, you know,
Yeah.
going into, see if you can get, instead of 200 hits, 201 hits, and then certain days you hit 300, and then the next day you hit 250, and you're like, what the hell is wrong with me, right? And so there's that, is that, the personality that gets really pissed off and just stays there. I mean, there at a certain point, right? There's a where there's a degradation of return, right? So it's like, do you just keep pushing past that and go farther in the hole? Do you, part of you is constantly sort of keeping track of, yes, you're building your stamina and endurance, but you're also saying, like, I know this is when I hit my max, my peak, and I can sustain that for X amount of time. And then there's a diminishing return, right, for what I'm doing. I could apply myself even harder, but it's only going to be force at that point, and it's only going to be, losing energy at that point because it's frustrating.
Sure.
So, those things all build up over time, but there's still a point where you're going to have that diminishing return. And so we all have to, sort of make a mental note of that. And if we keep a decent journal, then we see, like, wow, great day. Wow, sucky day. Wow, great day. Wow, sucky day. It's like until it becomes more consistent. And then, how long you can sustain certain events. And, that's the whole idea, right? Is to be able to, how quickly can you get to your peak, and how long can you sustain that peak before like, okay, I had that sensation, like it's going to start to drop now. I'm done. And I go, and then that's how I don't waste any energy, right? And there's no beating up over it, knowing that there can be fluctuation, right? It's just a matter of, like, am I consistently winning the set of games rather than the individual game each day? That's all. I want to win the set. I want to win the championships, not just the one game. So, yeah. So I think those are good ways to think about doing this for the long run.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward.